Sometimes people ask me, and why do I never talk about Israel/Palestine? And quite frankly, I ask myself that question. It's a very simple answer. I think you've got to talk about things that you sort of know about. I don't think I understand. I don't live in Israel. I don't understand Israel. I don't know enough. I've read as much as I could, but you can't remember everything. The situation is so complicated. How can you remember every fact? So I found it diabolical. Well, I found it amazing. Almost disbelievable or unbelievable. Is the word unbelievable? I find it unbelievable when I come across a lot of Jewish people that remember every single fact and they know everything. And in my mind, I think you're obsessed. I think you're obsessed. That's the only thing on your mind. So I decided against better judgment. I decided let me talk about Israel today, just for call it an experiment. I can always not publish or edit a hell of a lot. I brought in my friend Abdul. Abdul might provide a bit more clarity, a bit more balance. Yes, might give it a bit more credibility. Because Abdul, very clever guy. So Abdul, thank you for joining me. Now, Abdul, straight away, off the bat, the one thing I want to ask you: anti-Semitism. If you criticize Israel, you're labeled an anti-Semite. That's definitely within the Jewish community in Johannesburg, South Africa. What's your interpretation of that?
I don't think that's necessarily true. Right now, the strand is that if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Semitic. But you don't hear criticism like, I think the Israeli health policy could be better because the current minister should be replaced with somebody who's more of a specialist. That kind of criticism nobody would call anti-Semitic.
Okay, let me give you a real example. Back in 2014, Israel was retaliating to Hamas sending rockets into Israel, and they bombed the hell out of Gaza, like really bombed the hell out of Gaza. And then at a point where a group of South Africans got together and signed a petition imploring the Israeli Defense Force to cease the hostilities and stop. All the people who signed the petition, including myself, I was labeled anti-Semitic. Why did people label us anti-Semitic? For saying, okay, you've bombed the shit out of Gaza, just enough already, okay, let's do a ceasefire. And then funnily enough, 2 weeks later or a week later after we were labeled anti-Semitic, there was a ceasefire. So does that mean the Israeli Defense Force are anti-Semitic? I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's my interpretation.
It would depend on the exact wording of the petition.
Okay, well, for argument's sake,
yeah.
The message of the petition was enough is enough. Stop the hostilities for humanitarian reasons. Ceasefire. As simple as that.
Again, I don't know the exact wording, but obviously the theme is that you didn't want hostilities to continue, right?
Okay, is that anti-Semitic?
I don't think so, but it really depends on the exact wording.
I can see you're going to be one of those difficult guests that you're not going to let the facts get in the way of a good discussion.
Well, yeah, if I had read it myself, I would be able to comment better, probably.
Okay, maybe you're the right person then that I brought in. Cool. Okay, fair enough. Why do people say, why does the Jewish community worldwide, for example, I was once at a Friday night dinner, somebody said Barack Obama is an anti-Semite. We have a mutual friend who says the UN, the United Nations, are rabid anti-Semites. Why? Explain that.
Well, probably with Obama, I can't say whether he's an anti-Semite or not.
Why do people say he's anti-Semite?
I guess because when he first started his presidency, he took a trip to the Middle East, but he never actually stopped in Israel, which is America's huge ally in that part of the world.
What he's worried is going to come across Jews.
And he also tried to favor an Iranian deal.
Why did he not stop in Israel? Was there a reason given?
I don't remember the specific reason, but his policy was focused on some sort of Iranian diplomacy.
And was that Iranian diplomacy interpreted as being anti-Semitic or not?
Well, if it was trying to obviously attack the state of Israel and he was negotiating with them instead of maintaining sanctions and pressure, then of course he's trying to obliterate the state of Israel, which is anti-Zionist, which, as you know now, is anti-Semitic.
So Obama was indirectly trying to obliterate Israel.
I mean, of course,
Was that the interpretation?
Via doing that, I think the interpretation was that he was negotiating with an enemy that's openly hostile towards the state of Israel, and they are anti-Zionist, and he was obviously giving them legitimacy, so he was endorsing that. So, of course, it's very hard to untangle those things, but at the same time, he did provide aid to Israel, which was always being done up to that point. But I think the way in which it was done, like talking openly with like a leadership that was completely against Israel, was anti-Zionist and hence anti-Semitic.
Okay, and now and then explain how anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Like what? Why do people say that?
Okay, well, I'll give you what my understanding of when you take anti any position is. So I agree with this futurist. His name was Jose Ortega y Gasset.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I know his
He was
work. I know him well.
Spanish
Good
guy.
man.
I think he wrote a book called Revolt of the Masses. And
Revolt of the Masses.
Yeah.
Give me his name again.
Jose Ortega y Gasset.
Is he still alive?
No, he's far gone now.
Okay.
So he said when you take anti any position, it means that you want to go back to a time or situation where that position didn't exist at all. So if you're anti-Zionist, Zionism is the creation of a state for Jewish people within the boundaries of Israel, then it means you want to go back, if you're anti-Zionist, to a time when no such thing existed. And obviously that is anti-Semitic according to that interpretation.
If you say Israel is not entitled to occupy the land of Israel, if the Jewish people, are not allowed to occupy the land of Israel, that is, you're anti-Semitic.
I rather take the notion of international law than to say that the Jewish people shouldn't do that. Israel is a fact right now, and each state has its own issues to consider in the international community. So all anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, but all anti-Semitism is not necessarily anti-Zionism.
People who hate Jews do not necessarily hate Israel.
Yeah. For example, in America, and even France, for example, as one of the countries in Europe, people are massively anti-Semitic, but they support Israel because they want to kick Jews out of Europe to go to Israel.
Wow.
Like
that's that's a really bizarre way of thinking.
Yeah, but that's actually the notion. You get these people like on the far right who have those types of ideas. They're rabid anti-Semites, but at the same time they support Israel because they say
I never heard of that.
They say things like Israel should go there so that Muslims and Jews can have mutual annihilation.
Mutual annihilation.
Because they don't like Muslims or Jews. So they support the state of Israel. Also, at the same time, there's like Christian strands, Christian evangelicals who are also anti-Semitic because they believe that all Jews should convert to Christianity or that Jews killed Christ. But at the same time, they support the state of Israel.
Let's clear that up. Who actually killed Christ? Because people forget. With time, one forgets. Hey, who killed him? Was it the Romans?
Yeah, I think it was the Romans.
It was the Romans. He was a threat, right?
So they say it was, yeah, obviously it was the Romans, but they eventually became Catholic, which is kind of confusing. There are no Romans anymore. I mean, I wish I could find one, but I don't think there is one anymore.
Well, they're the Italian, the descendants are Italians, right?
No, I mean the establishment that actually killed Christ.
What was that establishment called?
I think it was just the Roman Empire.
Okay. Let's go forward a bit. So more recently in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the well-known podcaster Joe Rogan, I caught a clip of him. Unfortunately, he said he was talking. He had a guest in the studio with him. Don't know who she is. He said, saying that Jews are not interested in money is like saying Italians are not interested in pizza. So immediately I thought, oh my God, that's a terrible thing to say. That's anti-Semitic, because that is the kind of rhetoric that led to things like the Holocaust, because Jews were seen as money hungry and damaging the German economy. Why does somebody like Joe Rogan, like why is he so blind to that kind of, like, blind to the interpretation of what he said?
Probably because most times he's on the show, he's high as a kite.
Oh, really?
Or maybe he just thought that. I mean, I can't give you Joe Rogan's justification.
Okay, but this, this because what Joe Rogan said is unfortunately a very common stereotype, historically and presently.
Yeah, I'm not going to justify his position. It was straight out wrong, and he should take corrective measures for what he said.
But people watch his show. He's got a huge following.
Yes.
Isn't it scary that people sit there and Joe Rogan says something like that and nobody questions? Oh yeah, Jews love money.
That's because
we all love money. Everybody loves money.
That's because most people listening to the show as well are really high.
High or stupid?
I don't know whether they're stupid or not, but I mean, if they're paying to watch the show, then that's the product that they're wanting. Joe Rogan is a product, and they support having that product in their lives.
Okay, let's just back up now. Talking about peace in the Middle East, Israel, Palestine, it's never ending. Is it ever going to? What is your prediction? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, we can't say that it's never ending. I mean, of course, people desire a better state of diplomacy.
Where are we going towards? Because now we got the most ultra right-wing government in Israel. Yeah. Where are we heading towards? And this is where I think we're heading. So Israel's going to become more right-wing. There's going to be more violence, retaliation from the Palestinian side. Then Israel's going to retaliate. And then in 10 years' time, or 5 years' time, or 8 years' time, we're going to go back to a more moderate Israeli government, maybe slightly left-wing. That's the way I see it. It's like in America, where you have a Republican president for 4 years or 8 years, and then we change to a Democratic Democratic president, and then we go back to Republican. It's almost the same thing. That's the way I see it happening.
So on the order of 5 to 10 years, you want me to predict what may happen?
No, well, why not?
I'm not actually sure, but I would just say with the current Abraham Accords, I think it's heading in a good direction if they use diplomacy.
Oh, hang on. Okay, now the Abraham Accords, they signed peace deals with various countries, basically most of the Arabic Muslim countries, except not Syria and Iran, right?
Yeah,
and not Iraq.
But also you have to understand that diplomacy doesn't work directly. Sometimes the allies that Israel now has that are new are allies or have diplomatic relations with other countries, so they can indirectly influence those relations.
Okay, but why are the Palestinians and an organization in South Africa like the Media Review Network, why were they so why were they highly critical of the Abraham Accords?
Well, because they think that the current setup should be to have a consensus in the international community that gives Palestine what they deem is just.
Sorry, explain that again?
They think that this is not just towards the Palestinians.
In other words, this Abraham Accord is just completely ignoring the Palestinians, and it's just saying, oh, we buddy, we're doing trade, direct flights between each other, and it hasn't really dealt with the elephant in the room, which is the Palestinians' humanitarian strife. Or is that what you mean?
I guess that's what those groups believe. Possibly.
Is it not also that they believe that various countries like Saudi Arabia, Morocco, UAE, they're not at war with Israel anyway? So wasn't it like, in my mind, my interpretation is that it was completely blown out of proportion. This isn't such an amazing thing. If Israel made peace with Syria and Iran and Iraq, That would be a big story. When Israel made peace with Egypt, that was a big story. For Israel to make peace with those countries, aren't those countries anyway buddy with America? And how the Abraham Accords, was it really such a big deal?
Yeah, it's really a big deal because Israel made relationships diplomatically with countries that previously had no diplomatic relations with.
Okay, do diplomatic relations make such a huge difference? Wasn't there trade anyway with these countries and Israel?
Let me say, like, for example, diplomacy is probably like a form of technology, right? So technology can be used in multiple ways to achieve different processes that make life more efficient and beneficial for our species. So diplomacy is a way for us to connect with each other and have relations and be able to talk out things. So if, like, for example, the UAE has relations with Iran, then Israel could indirectly get some of their interests to be talked about by this ally, so that the common interests between Israel and the UAE are considered by Iran from a security perspective, for example.
Do you think Trump and his son-in-law, what's his name again?
Jared
Kushner, do you think they were thinking as deep as that?
I think I wouldn't be able to know their justifications, but I am
We're
much
speculating.
I think that they wanted more peace for Israel, yes, and they wanted to do something that nobody else would do before, which is maintain the status quo, because Trump is not a traditional politician. He came like basically out of nowhere.
Okay, Abdul. You've been balanced.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, maybe we will think of having you again. We'll see. Do we leave anything out? Anything that you wanted to bring up?
No, I think the conversation's been limited towards what we wanted to talk about, and we should talk about another topic. Yeah, so I think it's good.
You think we covered everything?
I think that we have.
Am I an anti-Semite? Okay, let me ask you a question. Iranian/American journalist about 4 months or 5 months ago was killed. Israeli gunfire. She was killed.
She wasn't Iranian. She was Palestinian American.
There you go. So let's not split hairs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know who she is. Well-known, famous journalist, well-respected. She was killed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but sadly these things do happen, right? It can be an accident.
But what am I correcting?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. I noticed that straight away, the Israeli spokespeople or the Israeli government, surely they should have released a statement saying, oops, huge condolences to the family, terrible mistake, we really regret this occurrence. Without admitting that they were in the wrong, just showing some kind of humanitarian sympathy, showing some empathy. We didn't get that. Did we get that kind of message? Now, for me, at the time, I thought to myself, at least do that.
But they did.
Did they do that? Maybe they did, and I missed it.
They did say that they wanted to investigate, but they were not given certain things from the other side. And eventually, when she did pass away, it was not possible.
What do you mean eventually? She passed away straight away?
I mean, when obviously the whole thing was over, they did say that they couldn't investigate it, or because it would cause instability in the country.
But how about a statement that we regret this loss of life?
This
was an unfortunate incident, and condolences to the family. How about a statement like that?
I'm very sure that they did communicate with the family. I think it was in the media.
Yeah, but you've got to give a public statement.
I think they did. I think Benny Gantz did.
Yeah, okay. I'll take your word for it. I'll take your word. For example, about a year and 2 months ago or so, an ex-South African young man, he had immigrated to Israel. He was shot dead by a Palestinian. Whole Jewish community in Johannesburg was really upset. It was well publicized. Our chief rabbi wrote an article about it. He labeled the young man as a hero. I don't know. If you are a murder victim, I don't know how you become a hero. And suddenly the murder victim's family are these wonderful, I don't know how you become wonderful people because your son was killed. it's a very tragic occurrence. Condolences to the family. Horrible, horrible thing to have happened. The point of the matter is there was public outcry, and the South African Zionist Federation or the South African Board of Deputies, they made statements, they said things. But when things happen in Israel, people say things in South Africa. But when this Palestinian-American journalist was killed, not a word.
No, they did. It was.
There wasn't a word.
It was in the South African Jewish report.
What did they say?
I think it was along the lines of like this was a difficult situation and like it should not have happened, and she was a journalist, and yeah, they did talk about it.
That's why I brought you in.
Yeah.
You bring a bit of credibility to this show. Thank you. So I was wrong. Did you? Who knew that I would be wrong?